everybody, I trust you're safe and well, and it's great to be with you all today. Last year's given us a glimpse into the future. It's highlighted the speed at which technology has had to respond to the disruption and the critical importance of a highly resilient, globally scalable infrastructure to keep the world running. Understanding the next normal is likely to be one of the most frequently discussed topics for the foreseeable future. And yet, it'll have many different interpretations and impacts across different industries, economies, for governments and society at large. But there are some common denominators, and to find them, you kind of have to consider what are the new experiences that have been created for consumers, for patients, for employees. What are the new norms that have emerged? And what are the new priorities for organizations in terms of where they will focus, what investments they'll make, and the allocation of resources. Well, let me take you through some of the thoughts that we've got and the perspectives on this as we, I guess, not predict the future, but pattern match based on what we've seen happen over the last year and where things will go next. Well, firstly, it's this category I'd call around new experiences. Online has really become the new frontline, and these experiences have blended together into what I'd call this hybrid experience that we're now living through. This trend from offline to online was already here. E-commerce was already very visible. It was eating into bricks and mortar sales for a while now, but the pandemic accelerated a trend that was already happening. We've got many new experiences, which I know we all probably live and breathe every day now, from virtual dressing rooms, online tutorials, and all of these experiences are based on applications. And it's that which is forcing IT teams to really have to think about the application experience, both for employees, for their customers, for their patients, for their organizations, from an end-to-end perspective. And the way applications are developed now is completely different to even just a few years ago. They're highly distributed, sit in multiple clouds, and having that visibility into what is happening real time becomes even more important. And if there's one thing that we Brits hate, or I should say dislike more than physical cues, it's digital delays to our online experiences. Nobody likes that buffering. Nobody wants that transaction stopped. And so organizations are having to look at how they augment their both online experience with their physical space. We've also seen, interfaces and interactions having to go contactless. Emerging technologies will absolutely help us limit the amount of physical contact people have with surfaces or each other. We've seen a surge in sort of voice and machine vision interfaces and contactless payment options over the last year. And as kind of places of work reopen, there's a lot of thinking about how you create a safe return to work, how people can move through spaces securely and safely, perhaps with only their smartphone and voice commands. We put sensors in our WebEx collaboration devices that detect capacity in meeting rooms, announce if social distancing guidelines are not met, perhaps if there are too many people. But also maybe offering alternatives, saying there's another meeting room down the hall that you can go to, and maybe even booking it for you and providing you a map. In hospital environments, Wi-Fi connected surveillance cameras can be augmented and send alerts so that, if there are people not wearing PPE or keeping social distancing, they can be alerted. We can integrate now into building automation systems so that you can no longer, get into doors where people are not wearing a mask, for example, if there are environments that you need to protect. And that notion of virtual health is absolutely here to stay. Remote care, telemedicine, virtual consultations, call it what you like. All of these have now revolutionized healthcare as we know it. And the last year's proven that we can actually do things differently. All of the research has shown that telehealth has gone through the roof in terms of number of patients doctors are seeing virtually. Next, I think we'll see sensor-based technologies that really help us with remote health monitoring and complement those video consultations so doctors have more access to specific data to diagnose patients. I can foresee, 3D bioprinting, digital replicas. How quickly could we come out with a vaccine if we didn't have to test on human patients, for example? Using AI and augmented and virtual reality are going to be key as part of virtual health in the future. The second category is around these new norms that I expect we'll all have to get used to. The future of work will absolutely be distributed and hybrid. Studies have shown, overwhelmingly, even here in the UK, 87% of office workers want flexibility and the ability to choose whether they work at home or in the office. Meetings going forward will have at least one remote participant, and that's the reason why our workplaces are changing. One of our main motivations for going in is to collaborate with people. So we're having to think differently about what those environments will need to look like. But whilst we think about that and office workers, now that make a point around 2/3 of people in the workforce globally are not in an office-based job. So healthcare staff in a hospital setting being a great example, or on a manufacturing plant floor. So we need to think about the impact of technology and how we drive up productivity across all of these roles in a safe and secure way. And perhaps most importantly, we need to take an empathetic view and supporting employees, those who can't be in the office, managing how much time people spend in front of the screen. So that physical and mental well-being is going to be top of mind. And we're building things in our technology stacks to allow organizations and individuals to manage that far better than before. And talking about being in front of the screen, we're having to learn to relearn. When schools shut across the world, 1.5 billion children were out of education, and it had to change dramatically. And parents, teachers, children, amazing creativity and adaptability, but so many challenges faced by society, both in developed and developing economies. We've learned a lot. We've got a better understanding of how to do that remote education part, even as organizations. But as a parent, I've seen my kids growing up more tech savvy. I call them Generation Pandemic now, not Generation Y or X, because they've got a new level of digital skills which no other generation has had before. They're very adept at using video conferencing and productivity tools just like a pro. So I think in the future, more connectivity, more inclusive engagement through distance learning and digital content will be important. And those kind of events are really critical in terms of hybrid events. And I think that day of hybrid events has definitely arrived. For event hosts, like this, the future balance seems to be between experience and value for their audience and safety and security. And, we're having to see most event organizers become experts in density calculations. But at the same time, we've learned a lot over the past few months, how we can use, new technology to engage. Cisco Slido, for example, really helps engage before, during, and after meetings, for example, in a completely unique way. But as we see hybrid events start to rise, there'll be this notion of people in person, but people being digital as well. And whilst ratios will vary depending on the event, the digital format means that we can give access to more people, and it will be more inclusive going forward. And then the last category is this notion around new priorities for organizations. We had to make a lot of experimental choices because we just didn't have the time last year. And now organizations are having to think about what are the strategic long-term decisions we need to make as we move towards hybrid work and that next normal going forward. What are the things we need to put forward in the technology stacks to help us around secure connectivity, helping our employees work from anywhere, securing those workloads that are now sitting both on-prem in the cloud, taking software as a service solutions as a service so that you can actually have more flexibility to ramp up and ramp down as you need, only paying for what you need when you need it. And so all of this will drive flexibility, cost productivity, and predictability and manage IT spend, which we all have to do. And that kind of digital infrastructure on the IT stack we saw in 2020 has given us a glimpse of what the future will look like. Even at the height of the pandemic, there were concerns around the infrastructure. Would it withstand the pressure of everybody coming online? But thanks to the concerted effort of service providers and technology partners around the world, to a large extent, we had steady connectivity during such an unprecedented time. My prediction over the next decade is really around the fact that we need to prepare and become future ready for what's coming that we haven't even thought about yet. We're seeing the emergencies of virtual and augmented reality, remote surgery, higher density streaming up to 16K, new uses through 5G and quantum computing, and things we haven't even thought about yet, which we're going to have to prepare for. And actually, that the current internet infrastructure, can it viably support that? Do we have the economics to do so? And we're working through a lot of that and driving innovation that will enable us to get ready for that future. And then I think, for every organization, cybersecurity has been at the forefront. Organizations are having to be more vigilant. We all are, because our employees, our workforces are remote, connecting through different networks, through different devices. And we're having to bake security into the network design from the start. And in amongst all of the goodwill shown during the pandemic, the bad actors carried on and in many cases increased their efforts. And we've seen through our portfolio advances in AI and machine learning and automation are actually helping organizations with cyber defense capabilities. And I think now with the kind of wider availability of biometrics, both in the consumer and business world, means we can already start to explore what a world without passwords would look like. And later this year, through our Duo portfolio, we'll be releasing capabilities around passwordless. So we're certainly looking forward to that. And this reliance, last but not least, on data automation and robotics. On the 18th of February 2021, many of us, I certainly was, glued to the screens watching the images of Perseverance, a robot the size of a car landing on Mars. And Cisco WebEx had a role to play in terms of keeping NASA teams connected and doing their work remotely. But home on Earth, we come to realize how indispensable robots have become. Whether it's the manufacturing plant floor, whether it's in hospital or in other settings. I take a simple example of sanitization. It's simply not possible to sanitize large facilities such as airports, train stations, warehouses, just with a human workforce. And so I think we'll see more of this going forward, and making sure that these autonomous devices are secure will be important. And then in an attempt to take the account of the countless impact technology's had, I think one area that I wouldn't like to miss is certainly the environment and how the sky started to clean up. We've become closer to trying to drive better climate change activity, and that we've got to do going forward. And I believe technology will have a play in this going forward for those things to be more sustainable. So whether it's using data, automation, all of that will be important to make informed decisions around more energy efficient data centers, more energy efficient devices that perhaps power down automatically, or smart centers that contribute to the circular economy. Now, we know the best ideas come from the most unexpected places, and where solving sustainability challenges will be no different. And so I'm proud that we announced last year a global Cisco Foundation fund of $100 million to support sustainability initiatives around the world. And we're looking forward to seeing how that drives some of the change that we collectively need. Now, I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm immensely proud of how technology has shone a light on everything that we've been able to do in so many industries, in particular healthcare, over the last year. I look forward to seeing how we can all work together to ensure you all are future ready for whatever comes next.